All right. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast for Uniline. We have a really cool guest online with us today. He had me write up his introduction, so I'm just going to read that straight so we get a clear idea of David and his experience. So, David is a trained architect, interior designer, and project manager who has a strong bias for excellence. He has a rich base of experience, which spans the best part of a decade, working on hundreds of designs and construction projects in 19 countries of the world. He's also the brilliant mind and principal architect at the dynamic firm RC Atelier. RC Atelier is an Ontario-based architecture, interior design, and 3D visualization firm. From inception in 2017, one of the main goals of RC Atelier is to deliver what they fondly call bespoke architecture to capture their ideas of a space, interior or exterior, that fits the exact needs of the intended users. David, welcome. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you.
And David, I know we practiced before we went live. Did I pronounce that right or did I butcher it? Please help me. How do we say your firm name?
Yeah, RC Atelier.
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 You know, the Americans or French is very rusty.
Yeah, yeah. It's
But
French for studio.
beautiful, excellent. Well, I had a chance, obviously, to visit your website and review your work. Everything that you've done is very impressive.
Thank
So
you. Thank
thank
you.
you for being on. So today, what we wanted to do, obviously, with the launch of Uniline, our first Skyline product, University of Notre Dame has very impressive architecture and buildings, and we wanted to bring in an expert, David, obviously, to come in and talk to us about some of the featured buildings in the University of Notre Dame skyline. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it, building by building. David has done some research and obviously understands some of the more intimate details that went into the buildings. And the first building that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to turn the time over to David to talk about, is the Basilica of the Sacred Heart. So, David, please take it away. Tell us what your thoughts are.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Thank you so much. Uh, I think I'll start by saying it's quite an interesting building. There are so many things to talk about the basilica, for example. Is it the time, when the building was constructed? Because, that design style, like everybody knows, is synonymous to Catholic churches and all of that. And that's because it was built in between the 17th to the 19th century. And the design style then was Gothic revival. And what that means is buildings where their focus, first the material, stone. You know, Unfortunately, now in construction, we want to be quick to get stuff done. But back then, no, people take their time, put very interesting details. It takes years, sometimes decades to finish some of these buildings. And what you then see are intricate details. For example, in the Basilica of Sacred Heart, for example, you'd notice the stained glasses for all their windows. As a matter of fact, I think that building has the highest compilation of French stained glasses in the United States right now.
Really?
It's a it does. It's a wonderful, wonderful building. And I think it was built in the final form. You'd be interested. You would be surprised to find out that building was built with log and wood before. Actually, the initial, you know, building, the initial basilica was just wood, and then they had to redo it over the years and come up with a masterpiece. Or want to talk about the two towers? But on both sides of it, for just the bell, bell towers. Those for just the bell tower, those are quite interesting. The use of limestone, the use of brick, the use of balance. You'll see there's a bell tower on the right, there's a bell tower on the left. That's one of the features of Gothic revival architecture. There's always balance. Whatever you see on the right, most likely you see on the left. And so when you're looking at it, there is that visual balance and focus. You'll notice also the focus is in the middle portion of the building, which is what they want you to see. And every other thing just works to highlight that feature. The interior space is quite interesting. Magnificent is the word. The use of moldings. There was a lot of wood carvings and a lot of sculpturing with stone, mostly limestone. It's interesting. It's a masterpiece, I must say. Um, and I can tell you for free, if this same building was in Rome, it'd be a tourist attraction.
I believe
Be
it.
a tourist attraction.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at the pictures now together that, we had a chance to review. The exterior, exactly what you described, it's so symmetrical and
That's
so
right.
perfectly lined out. I know as an architect, you must have to be
Right.
very precise with
That's
your
right.
movements and placements and everything,
That's right.
purpose and a method behind it. And it really is just. I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at the picture. The towers right next to each other, like you described it, and it's fairly tall too. I mean,
It
200
is.
feet. That's a pretty tall. That's a tall building.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
And then I also think that the interior with the blue ceilings. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness! Obviously, some pretty amazing art for
Yeah.
it's obviously a Catholic basilica, and I guess there's a difference between a basilica versus a cathedral. Did you know anything or have any information about that, or what the
Um, I
differences?
think that there's not a lot of differences between a cathedral and a basilica, except that a cathedral usually is bigger. That's to start with, and
Okay.
also it's potato, really.
Potatoes. Okay.
Uh, you know, what country it was built in, sometimes, or what size, what features it has, and what year, what century it was built in, would, I mean, play a very important part in what it is named. But a basilica is a cathedral, it's a kind of a cathedral, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's helpful to understand. And then we kind of go. I saw here in some of the notes that you prepared. It's the Basilica of the Sacred Heart, and I'm looking at kind of towards the end there. It's obviously the Sacred Heart. What can you tell us about where it gets its name from, the significance of it, obviously the art and the architecture there. What can you tell us about that?
okay. Um, the name itself, gives it away, the Sacred Heart. That's when you mention the Sacred Heart in Christianity, especially amongst the Catholics, they talk about the Mary, the mother of Jesus. And you notice the paintings, even in the building, was depicting. And one of the pictures you're talking about um, is, I mean, this mural of the Last Supper. Um, a lot of those paintings, comes to depict that. And the name comes from that. The Sacred Heart is the heart of the mother, Mary, the mother of Jesus. And so you'd see one of those mirrors she was holding, literally holding the heart, so to speak. I don't know if that painting is still, intact right now, because unfortunately, some of these details, get lost over time. Some of them due to weather, flooding, rain, and all of that stuff. But uh, the paintings answers the question. The name answers the question. I think the name comes from those paintings, the Basilica of the Sacred Heart, because you would notice one of the pictures you see there at the end of the hallway. There's this painting there, you know, multiple paintings, and I think the name originates from there because that highlights the heart Mary, the mother of Jesus, and a pure heart.
And a pure heart. That's
Yeah,
beautiful. That's amazing. Yeah, you're 100% right. It kind of gives away the name of the building, gives
keeps it
away
away.
the name
Right.
and the theme. But it is a beautiful theme, and I think that that's something that certainly resonates with the University of Notre Dame, pure
Yeah.
heart, clean hands,
Yeah.
and, aspiring to, wonderful lives. So that's excellent. It's beautiful. There's an architecture term in here. I see in your notes, architecture term. I don't know if that's right, but I see a term here. The ceiling is adorned with monumental Trump Loyal coffers. Did I say that? Did I butcher that as bad as I did earlier?
Okay.
Talk about. Can you talk to us a little bit about what is a Trump Loyal coffers and how does that integrate into the design of the building?
Okay. Okay. Um, Obviously it's a French word, like you
Right.
see.
My French is terrible.
Yeah, it's just a weaving together of floral patterns, floral decorations, all of those stuff brought together. If you see the ceilings, there are a lot of mosaic work that when they were put together give floral patterns. You notice a lot of those blue, it's almost like a kaleidoscope, right? Where it's the same from this end and from that end, whatever end you're looking at it, everything looks like is the same. For example, if you look from the front all the way to the back, and you look from the back all the way to the front, you could convince someone you are in the same spot, right? And that's because of the patterns that they wove together with the mosaic, with the paintings, with the murals, everything forming this floral pattern. And that word, you just, that French word is just explaining that they all come to form of floral patterns in the ceilings, on the walls, on the columns. And it's majestic.
It is.
Majestic.
It is so beautiful. I mean, just inspiring for sure. And I'm really glad that we started with this one because this is one certainly that
Yeah,
uh, is a beautiful building, one of the more iconic and historic buildings of the
that's right.
university campus. It's one of the reasons why we put it right in the middle of our skyline. Obviously, when you're trying to put together a skyline of a university, it's not a perfect skyline, right? The buildings are actually located in different places, but our sort of interpretation of it was we wanted to, that building to be right at the center uh, of the skyline, like it's the center and the heart of the University of Notre Dame campus.
Yeah.
So
And if I had any affiliation with the University of Notre Dame, I'll be proud, I must say, to put that skyline. If I could put it, I mean, at the rear of my car, I would, because it's quite iconic. I've seen the skyline, the collection, of buildings you put together. It's almost like you did a time lapse, right? Because we're going to talk about the other buildings. I see buildings from the 17th century, 18th century, 19th, early 20th, and it's almost like a time lapse of the constructions that happened in the university. It's beautiful. I
excellent.
don't know if that was intentional, but that was quite smart. I love it.
Definitely was. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you pointed that out. We did got a lot of feedback and even the placements and how we wanted it to align and the messages sent there. So that's a very good call out. That's a very good point.
Yeah,
Well, excellent. That's a beautiful explanation. I love that we started with that. Let's talk about another one of the more iconic buildings
yeah,
of the University of Notre Dame campus, the Hesburgh Library, also known as Touchdown Jesus, which I don't want
yeah,
that to distract from the significance of the building, but everybody I know is very uh, loves that nickname for that building just because of how iconic it is. Everyone in the country will look at that building and know like that's Touchdown Jesus. But
that's
Hesburgh Library, and obviously another very impressive building of the University
yeah.
of Notre Dame campus.
I think I'll just start with where you started, also where the name comes from. You'll be shocked. It's quite interesting. The stadium, which we will talk about, is you know directly facing that building, and so when you run the full length of the stadium and you have a touchdown, that's what you see.
Yeah.
And so that's where the name comes from, actually.
Oh,
Because you have the name of it, the real name, I think it's Word of Life. That's the name of that mural on the library. But yeah, touchdown Jesus is much better, much cooler.
it is and I just think that its placement is beautiful. I can't imagine what it's like for those players to have
Yeah,
that opportunity. I don't know if they have a chance to look up as they're breaking away for a touchdown, but go
yeah,
Irish for sure.
go Irish.
We're big Irish fans. But yeah, so let's talk more. What did you observe as a professional architect? What were some of the things that stood out to you that impressed you about the Hesburgh Library?
Okay, first, that it is a library, you have to take extra care, in the material selection, uh, the layout of the building, the sizing, the shape, and all of that, because for every building, its use should determine, you know, the choices you make. And I think the architects did a phenomenal job in doing that. First, first thing you'd notice is there's a lot of natural light in the space, and that's because uh, uh, when you want to read, you want to see. There's no darkness is not your friend when you want to read, and it is a library. And so the choice of natural lighting is one, and it's sustainable also, because now you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to provide lighting for the space, because you see skylights there, large windows, and all of those were incorporated and positioned in such a way that light floods into the building, whenever wherever you're sitting and wherever you are. Now, that said, also, the choice of materials, very important for a library, because you want quiet, right? Like we rightly mentioned, the stadium is not far, right? But you want to be in the library and be able to still, concentrate on what you're doing if there is a match going on. And I think they did a good job of that with the choices of materials, that helps with the acoustics of the building. Because, like you said, I actually did a study of all the buildings, and the acoustics is quite impressive because they use sustainable materials, very sustainable materials. Uh, of course, like I mentioned earlier, I think we are doing a time lapse. We talked about the basilica, which is much older than the library. And then we move next to the library. And so because of that, the building material, the material choice changed a bit, right? There's some steel, some concrete in the construction of the library, unlike the basilica that's stone and brick, because of that, which is more appropriate to the time that it was built, right? And so again, you would notice there are hardly any interior walls in the library. That's an interesting thing, an interesting feature, because you want that space uh, to be able, you want to be able to use the space different ways at different times. What you would find there are movable walls. And so if you wanted a bigger space, you could just move the wall and it's bigger. You wanted a smaller space, you could move the walls and it's a smaller. You could divide the space into whatever you want it to be. And that still, goes to, talk about the sustainability they were thinking of in the construction of the building. Because I can imagine if it was, you know, walls everywhere, for you to get a bigger space, that's a huge construction project because you need to take down a wall. You need to, but because I like the thought that was put into the construction, the design, the construction of the library, in the sense that you can get the whole, just an open floor if you wanted, right? And if you wanted some demarcations, there are movable walls that could do that. And so the flexibility, the adaptability is quite impressive.
Hmm.
And obviously the mural, like we said, on the exterior, I mean, iconic.
Iconic, a work of art. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and it just looks like a place where you would want to study. It really is impressive. It has the theme of, I think oftentimes when people think of American universities, their minds are naturally drawn to Harvard or some of those northeastern
Yeah,
universities, just because of they're so much older and have been part of the country's history for so
yeah,
much longer than. But University of Notre Dame, I'm just looking at the library right now, and it just looks beautiful. It looks iconic. It looks like the place where I'd want to go study. The natural light coming in
right, right.
is really beautiful, and then even the exterior. It's so iconic, like you said, and large, and its placement. I know that it's a very popular place for university students to go and study and mingle and be part of, but certainly one of the more impressive and amazing buildings of the campus there. So
That's right.
beautiful. Okay, so now let's talk about another very iconic building in the University of Notre Dame, commonly known as the Golden Dome. Uh,
Yeah,
the correct term is the Mary atop the Golden Dome. So
right.
let's dive into that one.
Okay. That one, uh, again, just traveling, right? Now, let's talk about the dome because there are two features in that building: the dome sculpture, right? The dome and the sculpture. The
Right.
dome itself, um, hmm, it's like the dome is like an introduction to the sculpture. That's how I see it. Like you're drawing the eyes. It is drawing the eyes of everyone to the sculpture. The dome in itself is an impressive structure. You know, many a times we see these buildings, we look at them and we don't appreciate the complexity of that structure that's standing because you have a dome without any structural support in that is standing and carrying a really heavy sculpture on it. That's like the recipe for failure in structures if you're not careful. And so the construction of the dome, it's I think that the people who did the drawings, the architects, the builders, all of those people, maybe they went to University of Notre Dame because it's like in the spirit of the university, that resilience, it's seen in all of these buildings. The dome itself constructed from steel cladded with wood and just those two materials. You know, now we have more impressive building techniques. We have machines and all of that, where you could do a lot more things now. Impressive building materials that could, you know, become anything you want it to be. But when the building was constructed, there was a limitation to building materials you could use. And so what that meant was you had to be incredibly smart and incredibly, the structure has to be incredibly well thought out. And that's what I see with the dome. The dome itself, well thought out. Every inch matters. Every foot matters. Every line must be how it's supposed to if it's going to carry the sculpture. And it would interest you, the sculpture was not always up there. It was actually at the entrance of the building initially. But I think it was a wonderful idea to take it up there. I mean, amazing. I think it's a little more iconic. I mean, Mary, it's a little more iconic up there than it would have been if it was just at the entrance. And then let's talk about Mary. The Mary atop the Golden Dome. You know, that sculpture was designed by Giovanni Melli. I think it's a sculptor very popular in Italy. That sculpture, initially, there's one of such in Italy, I think somewhere in Italy, all right? And then it was replicated. And then, like I said earlier, it was put in front of the entrance of the building. And then whoever thought about taking it up there, wonderful idea. Wonderful idea. The sculpture was made, and for every time they have to reclad it in gold because of course it wears out sometimes. And even the process of going through and doing that, impressive.
Yeah,
Impressive.
very impressive. Boy, that's such an interesting piece of history that it was a decision to take Mary, the beautiful statue of Mary, and put it on top of the Golden Dome. It truly is Mary atop the Golden Dome, just
Now
like
it
it
is
says
right.
in the name of the title. And, I love how you emphasized the, impressive planning and execution of the architects and structural team behind it. You take a look, you take a close look. I'm looking at it right now. You take a close look at the buildings and the fine details, even the spirals and the way that it's shaped, and all of that is just impressive and beautiful. But what
Right.
what you pointed out, it's also an incredible, impressive expression of ingenuity in that it's
Yeah,
able to hold and sustain and support this
that's right.
large statue. And I think that's something that some people don't understand about these statues is they're very large. You look at it from a distance and you think, oh, it's,
It's tiny, but that's the 17-foot statue.
yeah,
Heavy, 4,400 pounds. Heavy.
yeah, super
That
heavy. Yeah,
heavy.
exactly. So you just can imagine the amount of planning and careful planning, I would say,
Yeah,
to make that happen. And then I love that you went into the gold leaf that's applied to her. And, it's amazing. I know that they take just incredible care because it's another thing that statues are prone to, especially statues that are top buildings, is
right.
wear and tear, weather and
That's right.
gas in that sense. So, but it is just immaculate. It is beautiful. Um, an amazing expression, and also another beautiful tribute. We talked about the Basilica of the Sacred Heart, and what that was representative of, and pure heart, and the emphasis on
Right.
Mary, the Mother of Jesus, and again, just another beautiful tribute of Mary atop the Golden Dome, and
That's right.
again, sort of I can imagine that any university student that walks around that campus and like you said, pointed out, is naturally drawn to the Golden Dome because it brings their eyes up there,
Yeah,
would feel inspired, just to try to be better. And that's the message that continues to
that's right.
resonate with me.
That's right.
These buildings really are designed and meant to inspire the students to be better and to be great. And what a beautiful iconic symbol for that, the Mother of Mary. So
Yeah,
um,
and I think the purity of the post actually is something that I would like to draw attention to, the purity of the sculpture, the post of Mary, the purity. I might be reading too much meaning to it, but I think there's purity in that post. The fact that the sculpture is up there unprotected. There's nothing. It's just up there unprotected, and it is standing sure, even without any form of support. From anywhere you could just see there, like you mentioned. Now, it looks tiny up there, but it's a large structure. It's a large structure, and I think kudos to those who maintain this the sculpture because I read that 18 times they've had to go up there and reapply the gold finish to keep it the way it is right now. That's that's impressive.
Yeah,
That's impressive.
it is, and just their dedication to it. And like I said, it's
Yeah,
just you find these images, and they're truly beautiful, truly amazing. Um, cool. Well, all right. Well, let's shift gears now a little bit. I feel like every piece that we've talked about has had a very kind of uh, reverent, respectful nature to it. But
yeah.
now we're going to talk about Notre Dame Stadium, where
There you go. Yeah,
a very impressive edifice.
yeah.
With a much different mission. We've already said it once. We'll say it again. Go Irish.
Go
We're big
Irish. Yeah.
University of Notre Dame football fans. But tell us what you've learned and what you shared, and from an architect's perspective about Notre Dame Stadium.
Okay, now we're back in the 20th century, with the stadium. But I want if you look at the other buildings we've seen in the stadium, even though they were in different times, different architectural styles, uh, they all pay homage to the other one. Like the Basilica pays homage to the sculpture. I'm sorry, to the Marriott of the Golden Dome. The Marriott of the Golden Dome pays homage to the Hesburgh Library. And then here we are at the stadium. Look around the stadium. Let's leave the stadium for a minute. The buildings around the stadium. You notice grandeur, and that's one thing that has been communicated with the other buildings. There is the grandeur because stadiums can become very plastic if you're not careful. Because what's the purpose? You want stands, you want a field. That's it. And then everything that comes around is just as it comes. But this is a well thought out masterpiece in itself. It wasn't just let's just have a stadium. Every and again, like I mentioned earlier, you'd see the balance. There is that balance. What's on the left, it's on the right.
Right.
Those simple things makes buildings timeless. And because it's not in your face, it's not in vogue, so to speak. It is timeless, classic. In another 75 years, it's still going to be a masterpiece. In 150 years, it's still going to be a masterpiece. And I think that was well thought out, especially for a university that has such a rich, history and such an affinity for football. What that means is this stadium is going to be in use for another. I mean, in another 150 years, it's still going to be here. And so it still has to be relevant to the times when it's being used. And I think the way it was built, it's going to forever be relevant. There's no outrageous element
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
need to think.
Timeless.
Yes,
Timeless.
it's a timeless piece.
Yeah.
And I think the idea now. Let's talk about the stadium itself, the stands, the pitch, and all of that. Of course, it used to be natural grass before, but maintaining that can be a big deal. And so I think now it's a little more. It's an artificial turf now, but that's not where I want to go. Look at the stands. See how close they are to the stadium and to the field. There is that relationship between the fans and the footballers because you're really there. It's almost like you're playing with them there, and that's not something you see in every stadium. I must tell you, you could check it out. The stands are usually a little farther away, but they wanted the fans to be a part of the experience, that intimacy in the experience, and I love that about the stadium. I love that about the stadium, and I've heard questions like, "What happens to the person who is up there?" The It's like a conductor, right? The closest person to the action is very close. Their energy is transmitted all the way up. And
Hmm.
so that's what happens when you have your fans that close to you. The energies. And that's why it's a university with a rich history of football because if you don't love football, if you don't like football, all I have to do is take you to the front seat at a football game and you would live there a football fan.
Right. 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 Right.
Because
Yeah.
of the experience. And that experience was um, thought of, planned for in the construction of the stadium. Architecture is beautiful in the sense that you can, with your structure, with a building, with your design, you can determine how people feel. You can you can evoke emotions with architecture, and that's one thing they did with stadium that I love so much. That I love so much.
Yeah, I know that it's one of the things that people hold so near and dear to their heart is their football team, and I love how you describe that experience of being there at the stadium, wandering it, and I'm again looking at this image of the stadium, and it is just so beautiful, so well planned out. It's even on both sides, like you said. It has the levels, and I believe that's natural grass there on the top of it too, which for garden viewing or you know. What that looks like, but it really is just so complete, so iconic. And I also love that you mentioned too. There's nothing flashy or out of place or anything. This building will stand the test of time forever, and everyone will be just forever impressed by the way that it is structured and beautiful. And I also love in your research and what you shared with me is that its inspiration was largely based on Michigan's stadium, the Wolverines, but you can see how it was inspired. And the Michigan Wolverines is one of the largest impressive stadiums in the country as well. But you can see how they took the kind of concept and of the stadium, and then when they built theirs, the pieces that they added, the symbolic towers, and then how it's even on both sides. It's obvious that they took inspiration from the University of Michigan Stadium, but then made it Notre Dame.
Right. Yeah, they did. And I think one of the, of course, there's the difference between taking inspiration and taking the right inspiration. I think they took the right inspiration, starting from the stands, like I said earlier, that immersive experience, that intimate experience. And that's a very good one to take. And also the balance, the timelessness of the design, like we have mentioned, it's gonna be there. It's gonna be relevant because talking about your product now, that the product is the skyline. If I am not sure the skyline would remain the way it is, then I'm not sure how long I mean that's going to be relevant. But for a stadium like that, I can guarantee you it's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
It's not going anywhere.
exactly. And when we first designed our University of Notre Dame skyline and we put it out there for feedback, one of the things that people came back and said is we need to see the stadium details more clearly. The
Right,
first design was pretty straight. We didn't, looking at they have the windows right incorporated into the buildings, probably again an emphasis
right,
of natural light. So that was something that we wanted to do in the newest version of the skyline is we wanted to make sure that that was emphasized so people clearly recognized that's our stadium, that's University of Notre Dame stadium, that's where the Irish go and they kick big butt. But
right, right.
yeah,
And that's a good one. That's a wonderful feature. That intricate feature to put in the skyline design because the truth is people want to be associated. They want to be sure of what they're being associated with, and the stadium, sports generally, it brings people together, right? And
yeah,
people identify with their football teams. This is, you know especially we're men, right? Sometimes women don't understand sometimes how much love that we can have for sport, and women these days are even more, you know uh, 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 the love for sport is something else. it, and so to have a building, a stadium that not only matches that energy, that intentionality, but almost surpasses, amazing, because now you're proud to say that's our stadium. You're proud to say that's our building. You're proud to say that's our home. And so to have that, obviously crafted and intricately displayed on the skyline, very important. Very
yes.
important.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it was one of the things that we had to think about is it's obviously one of the feature buildings that we wanted to highlight in the skyline and how can we make it more visible. But I think we in this conversation today, which I've really enjoyed, I think we've done an incredible job of covering Basilica of the Sacred Heart, Mary atop the Golden Dome, Hesburgh Library, and University of Notre Dame Stadium. There's several other just very impressive buildings when we kind of approached this and we're trying to decide on the buildings and coordinating with current and past students at the University of Notre Dame, they kind of gave us a selection of, oh, you need to make sure you include this building, and these are the details that we want to include for this building. But it truly is a beautiful skyline and an iconic campus with some of the most impressive university buildings in the country. So
That's right. And the choice of buildings, I mean, I'd mentioned earlier how it's so much almost a time lapse from the 17th century to the modern day. It is
right,
also it captures the different kind and different affinity of students and staff. Likewise in the university, because we started from a basilica, we moved to a library, we went to a sculpture, and then we ended it in a stadium. There's almost something for everyone.
right.
There's something for everyone. And so if you want to get the skyline, I could be getting it because of the stadium. Oh, I love the stadium. I want to have that. And then the next person could be getting it because of the library. Oh, I love reading here. And then I want to have that. And then the other person. And so it's a good selection of buildings to put on the skyline that touches everyone. Everyone is going to find something for themselves there. And so that's amazing.
Beautiful.
That's amazing.
Well, David, thank you so much for your time. Obviously, very, very much appreciate your expertise and your research and unique perspective in these buildings. As we conclude here, I want to give you an opportunity. What's the best way for people to follow your work, to get in touch with you, so that they have you as an opportunity to work with?
Yeah. Like you said, our website is thercatelier.com. That's THEV Atelier.
RC,
RC,
Atelier.
yes,
I want to get that right.
Atelier, yeah. RCATELIER.com. On there you'd see a collection of our past works, some of them. Of course, we couldn't put all of them in there, but some of the works we've done, especially in the US and in Canada. And I was especially, in love with the sculpture because I'd worked on something in the US, a similar structure. There's the Statue of Liberty in New York, and
Mhm.
there's a corresponding one that's in the East Coast. There's a corresponding one coming up in the West Coast uh, that I actually worked on. It's in the works now, and so
Beautiful.
so that's just on the side. So yes, you can follow. You can check some of our works on the website. You can follow me on Instagram at King David. That's KHING_David. Or RC Atelier on Instagram, the RC Atelier. Um, for RC Atelier, all social media platforms the same name, the RC Atelier on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and then some of our works you see there, and we try to put out as much as we can out there to showcase a good range of works that we do. But for me
Excellent.
personally, Instagram works. I'm on Twitter also, King David, KING_David, the last D being double D. That's how you can get me. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you so much, David. I really
Thank
appreciate your
you.
time.
Thank you, Ben.
Appreciate your insight, and we'll be in touch soon.
No problem. Thank you, Ben.
Bye.
Bye.